Let's say you have joined a new class in your school and they expect you to program in Python. So we are going to discuss what all options you have and what all you can explore. Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am Sachleen Singh and we are going to discuss what can you do with Python and where to get started. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's talk about the first scenario. So for the first scenario, let's say you don't have to process a lot of data, you don't have to upload or download a lot of files, and you are getting started with Python. So you just need to write small programs and implement basic parts. So the best choice for you would be Google's Colab. Now for that you would require an active internet connection throughout the time. So if you don't have that, I would recommend looking at other alternatives. But if you have an active internet connection whilst you are typing code and executing it, I think Google Colab is the best option for you. And if you require to add a few more libraries, the only thing you have to do is type this, the exclamation mark, pip install, and let's say I want to install pandas library for my data frames. I would go pandas and then just hit enter or shift enter to run the cell, and it would install that library for you. Now it already comes pre-installed with, I guess, numpys, pandas, keras, and TensorFlow. So you've got a good range of libraries already present for your help, and you can install more on the virtual machine. One good thing with this is that it doesn't put a lot of load on your machine, so everything is working on virtual servers. So you just need to connect to one of those and then execute your program. And you can go ahead and download your program as a .python or a .ipynb, which is an interactive Python notebook. So everything works. Let's say you have to move a lot of data in and out of your notebook. How are you going to do that in Google Colab? So if worst comes to worst and you have to do this, put the data in your drive and then connect that or mount your drive to your notebook. That's very easy. Just upload stuff to your drive and then search Stack Overflow for the code. Well, I'm going to leave the link of that code in the description. I'm also going to leave the code in the description. So if you want, you can just pick that stuff up and it will provide you a key that you can enter. And then once you enter that key, your drive should be mounted and you would be able to use the folder that you are required to be processing. So one other editor that I would like to recommend for you is Pycharm. It is an editor in which you can code offline and it's used in plenty of corporates. The good thing is that it comes with plenty of features. Let's talk about some. So it comes with debugging, testing, profiling, VCS deployment and remote development, database tools. It also has intelligent code editor, smart code navigation, and fast and safe refactorings. There are plenty of other features in Pycharm. You can also use an interactive Python or an IPYNB environment, and you can also code in .py or the original Pythonic environment. So Pycharm is another thing you want to go to if you are actually planning to code offline. It helps with the repositories and things that you are going to build with. So Pycharm is the other software that we are going to talk about. Well, getting started with Pycharm, you just need to go to Pycharm's website and download the Pycharm software, install it, and you are ready to roll. To set up a few other things, there is a video by Pycharm. I'm going to link that in the description below. Be sure to check it out if you're looking at Pycharm. So let's get to the next one. Another software that is used quite a lot is the Visual Studio Code or the VS Code. And in that, once you've installed VS Code, go to extensions and search for Python. Once you have downloaded the Python file or the plugin, it's much easier to get started. You can also use Magic Python, which is a syntax highlighter. It's a similar library, but it helps out with highlighting the syntax and it makes things much more good looking when you're looking at the contrast and everything else. So Visual Studio Code with Python and Magic Python works amazingly well if you're starting with stuff. Again, there are libraries that you can add and use in Visual Studio Code and other Pythonic environments. Another interface that bolsters the interactive Python community is Anaconda. It is in fact the first environment that I started coding in Python with. So I would suggest Anaconda is a good place to start. But once you get into multiple environments and you need to use multiple variations, it becomes a bit iffy. But for basics, I think Anaconda is also a good place to start if you want to use interactive Python. So if you have made it this far, you are in for a treat, because now I'm going to discuss what I use as a researcher for my Python environment. What I use is a combination of two things: Poetry and JupyterLab. Now Poetry handles all the libraries, whereas JupyterLab handles the front end. So let's look at how JupyterLab works. So it would run a local environment on any of the web browsers, and then you can code and finally save your stuff from there, and it's already saved as an IPython notebook there. So it is completely offline. It helps with a lot of stuff, and Poetry helps to manage the repositories and the stuff that you're working with. Now, one good thing with Poetry and JupyterLab together is that with Poetry you can make kernels for different projects. Let's say I'm using TensorFlow 1 for project A and then TensorFlow 2 for project B. Now TensorFlow codes are compatible, but the issue is that I may be using a different version or different library version of one of the libraries and something else for the other, so I cannot use both of them together. So what I do with Poetry is that put them into different folders and then do a Poetry init or create a new Pythonic environment for each of the subfolders. So virtual environments help out in these ways. So you may also have known about VENVs or virtual environments in Python, and those really help out if you've got different features or different setups for different projects. It's time to say goodbye. So if you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to the video. I will see you in the next video then.